boarding comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for the Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30am till 12pm, every single weekday, called to the point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the Channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30am till 12pm, every single weekday, right here on GB News, for To The Point.
And welcome once again to On the Money, your daily weekday dose of economics, business and consumer news. I'm Liam Halligan, and for the next hour, we'll be talking about the COP26 summit, but not as you know it. But first, here's the GB News headlines with Rosie Wright.
Good afternoon. Let's get you up to date at 1 o'clock. Ending and reversing deforestation by 2030. That is the promise of 105 countries at the climate conference COP26. It's the first major agreement at the summit, and it could help to protect 85% of the world's forests. Boris Johnson says the pledge is a chance to end humanity's long history as nature's conqueror and instead become its custodian.
Let's channel funds towards securing the rights of indigenous peoples and local communities and shift trillions towards supporting sustainable jobs, so that protecting our forests is not only the right course of action to tackle climate change, but the right course for a more prosperous future for us all.
US President Biden has pledged American support for preserving forests and other ecosystems. In a speech at the conference, he said the scheme can and should play an important role in meeting ambitious climate goals. He also said all that was really needed was commitment to change.
I'm confident we can do this. All we need to do is summon the will to do what we know is right and we know is necessary and know is in our capacity. So, as simple as it sounds, I think it is this simple. Let's get to work. We can do this, and it'll have a generational impact. Thank you.
2 Metropolitan Police officers have pleaded guilty to misconduct in public office after they shared images of the bodies of 2 murdered women. PC Dennis Jaffa and PC Jamie Lewis took photos of the murdered sisters Biba Henry and Nicole Smallman on WhatsApp while they were protecting a police cordon. Speaking outside the Old Bailey, Mina Smallman was asked if the Met Commissioner, Dame Cressida Dick, should resign.
Yeah. And, you know, whenever I was in a senior position, if my organisation or department failed, it was on me. It was on me. I had to take the can for it. Well, it's now time for them to take the can for it.
Insulate Britain has begun staging demonstrations outside of the southeast of England for the first time today. Around 60 protesters disrupted traffic in Manchester, Birmingham and London this morning. It's the 8th consecutive week that they've held protests. 9 demonstrators have also been told they face committal proceedings over the breaking of injunctions granted to national highways. The Environment Secretary, George Eustice, says a British scallop trawler has now been released after being held by French authorities. Well, it comes after France backed down in a dispute over French vessels fishing in British waters. The French president warned they could block British boats from its ports from today if they fail to issue more licences to French fishermen. Speaking to GB News, the Environment Secretary said any action by France would have been a breach of the Brexit agreement.
Those threats to deliberately create border disruption and prevent UK vessels going into French ports would have been a breach of the agreement we've got with the European Union, and probably would have breached elements of EU law as well. They only have to demonstrate that they've got a track record of working, at least one day a year over a 4-year period of accessing our waters. The vast majority have been able to demonstrate that with the records that they have.
The price of fuel has gone up by 27% over the last year. An average litre of petrol now costs 143.7 pence. That's 30 pence more than November last year, and it's the highest price ever recorded. It means it now costs around £17 more to fill up a typical family car. The increase in fuel prices has been driven by the cost of oil doubling in the past year. Some MPs are calling for the rollout of smart motorways to be suspended because of safety concerns. The scheme, which uses the hard shoulder as a permanent traffic lane, has been criticised by the Commons Transport Select Committee. Concerns were raised after multiple incidents involving fatalities where broken-down vehicles were hit by other drivers from behind. Yesterday, demonstrators protested against smart motorways by marching to the Houses of Parliament. You're up to date here on GB News. I'll bring you the latest headlines at 1:30. Right now, though, On the Money with Liam.
And this is On the Money coming up today. As the COP26 Climate Change Summit gets into gear, we're not talking about pain and sacrifice and morality. This is On the Money. So we're talking about technology, specifically hydrogen technology. Can the so-called magic molecule, a constituent part of water, of course, help the UK and the world reach that net zero carbon emissions target? We'll be talking to leading experts in the field. And each day On the Money features an in-depth Money Talks interview. Today we're hearing from someone who knows all about Summit Tree and the trade-offs of politics and economics. Jonathan Haslam spent over a decade in Number 10 and was in charge of communications for Prime Minister John Major. And as ever, I want your questions, opinions, suggestions. It's your show too, so get in touch. What do you think about our debate today? gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet @GBNews. This is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan, and you're On the Money. So COP26 moves into day 2. And the hectoring, hypocrisy and virtue signalling continue. But don't worry, there's still another 10 days to go, you lucky people. So there's plenty more to come. Most of the political and media class is convinced the world faces meltdown unless we lower our carbon emissions, reaching so-called net zero by 2050. Meanwhile, millions of ordinary men and women look on at this Glasgow summit and frown. Yes, there is broad understanding and acceptance among the UK population we should pollute less and pass on a better world to our children and grandchildren. But I'd say the silent majority of British people, ordinary mums and dads, hard-working folk holding down jobs and running small businesses, are thinking, fine, yes, but how much will it cost? And how can I afford an electric car, a heat pump for my house, and ever-spiralling energy bills? How much of the burden of transitioning to this low-carbon, low-emission economy, the COP26 agenda, will fall on me and my family when we're already struggling to make ends meet? Net zero by 2050 isn't just the aim. In this country, it's mandatory. In 2019, Theresa May's government passed legislation requiring the UK to hit that target by law. That means not only reducing our use of fossil fuels like coal, oil and gas, but offsetting the emissions caused by the fossil fuels we do use with so-called carbon capture, tree planting and other carbon reduction strategies. Now, here On the Money, over recent weeks, we've been discussing, with new petrol and diesel vehicles set to be banned by 2030 and gas-fired boilers to be replaced by expensive heat pumps, how much this strategy will cost. Government estimates of the annual bill remain vague and non-committal, and cost concerns among the general public are rising. But it strikes me achieving net zero in a less polluted world isn't so much about pain and sacrifice, it's more about being technologically savvy. It's about renewable technology, harnessing wind and solar in a way that's cost efficient. It's about battery technology, storing renewable energy so it provides a constant baseload electricity supply that can safely and reliably replace fossil fuels. But the technology that really interests me is the so-called magic molecule, hydrogen, which can be burnt to produce both heat and energy. A recent government strategy paper plans to allow what's called blue hydrogen, made using natural gas or perhaps other fossil fuels. Environmentalists and some investors in hydrogen say that misses the point, and we need instead green hydrogen, produced by splitting water via electrolysis. Electrolysis powered by renewable energy only. If you produce such green hydrogen using renewables, hydrogen which can then power cars, buses, ships and maybe even aeroplanes, then in my view, net zero becomes a real possibility without the pain, sacrifice and chest beating being promoted by the COP26 crowd. So that's our On the Money debate today. Is hydrogen the key to net zero? Here On the Money, as ever, we have grown-up conversations with people who really know their stuff. And today we're joined by Hugo Spowers, the founder of River Simple, who's been on the show several times over recent months. River Simple makes electric cars powered by hydrogen. We also have Malcolm Grinston, Honorary Senior Research Fellow at the Centre for Energy Policy and Technology at Imperial College. And here in the studio, economist, friend of the show, Catherine McBride. She's from the Centre for Brexit Policy and a trade specialist. And, of course, another familiar face, Victoria Scholar, Head of Investment at Interactive Investment and another On the Money regular. Malcolm, let's turn to you first. You just heard my opening gambit there. Why do you think it is that hydrogen is so low down on the agenda at COP26? Why do you think it is that the government has only very recently put out a hydrogen strategy?
As you start, there are enormous advantages with hydrogen. When you're actually using it, it only produces water, which is great for both local air quality and for climate change. We should bear in mind the first time that hydrogen was generated using electricity from wind was actually in 1891. It was only 4 years after the first electricity was generated from wind in Strathclyde in 1887. The reason it's never really taken off, I think, is severalfold. Firstly, hydrogen is very, very difficult to liquefy. It's not like natural gas, where you can liquefy it quite easily. So storage has to be through an enormous network of pipes, really, realistically. It has only about a third of the calorific value of natural gas on a volume-for-volume basis. So you are needing to ship an awful lot more of it through your systems. And because of that, you do need to adapt a lot of the end-use technology. You can't just swap over from natural gas to hydrogen in your central heating, let's say, and expect it to work. You would need a great deal of probably quite expensive adaptation required. And it's also explosive. We still see pictures of the Zeppelins, the great Hindenburg disaster. And so it needs to be managed in those ways. So I think all of those have been reasons why it has not really taken off as yet. When I was involved in the Sustainable Cities programme at Imperial around the year 2000, there was a huge amount going into hydrogen economy there. And it hasn't really got us anywhere. So it's overcoming those barriers, low fuel density, very volatile, very difficult to liquefy, those sorts of practical issues which are inherent in hydrogen. I'm not saying they can't be overcome, but they are real challenges.
Let's go to you, Hugo Spowers. You've been an advocate, a proponent of hydrogen for a long time, and it's your belief that it's a network of hydrogen cars and buses and infrastructure to fill those cars and buses that will eventually power this country. Malcolm Grimston says hydrogen's explosive. Well, oil and gas are pretty explosive, and he says it's difficult to liquefy. Well, some people have been testing the creation, haven't they, of so-called green ammonia made from hydrogen, mixing it with nitrogen so it can be transported easily. Where do you think we are with this hydrogen technology, given that you're actually making hydrogen-fuelled cars over there in Wales?
Well, I think that by and large, most people accept in any vision of a sustainable energy future that hydrogen has got an indispensable role to play. I agree with Malcolm that there are some challenges, but the situation has changed dramatically from the 1890s, and we are living in a very different world today. And electricity and hydrogen between them are the perfect energy vectors. It's very important to think of hydrogen not as a fuel. Like electricity, it's an energy vector. You can't dig either of them out of the ground. They don't grow on trees. And so it's not an equivalent to petrol or oil. Another reason why they are such perfect partners is that they have different strengths and weaknesses, and together they can achieve much more than either energy vector can on their own. And we can go either way, from electricity to hydrogen or hydrogen to electricity. It's also on the explosive point of view, issue. There's any chemical fuel worth its salt is explosive. Natural gas is explosive, petrol's explosive, and it's because they carry a lot of energy with them. It's also worth pointing out that our gas grid until the 1960s was between 50 and 60% hydrogen anyway. So it's a conversion back to where we used to. Now, it's not going to happen overnight, converting our gas grids to hydrogen. But I think in the long run, that's got to be the way that we're going to go.
It strikes me, Catherine, I know you're an economist who has a range of interests and you look at this energy question. It strikes me there's a sort of growing drumbeat of advocacy for hydrogen. We just saw yesterday announced a deal between JCB, which of course has famously been experimenting with hydrogen diggers, and I'll talk about that a bit more later in the discussion, and Fortescue Mining Group, run by Andrew Forrest, the Australian mining titan, because he's completely converting his massive mining conglomerate to net zero, and he wants to become a hydrogen producer extraordinaire. And he's done this deal with JCB, two multi-billion-pound companies run by really serious people. So this isn't pie in the sky, is it?
No, it's not. And there's a lot of trucks, for instance, that MAN are making one. Nikola trucks in the US and Enzon, I think it is. It's obviously very interesting in Australia because the idea that you can run a motor and have water coming out the exhaust pipe is something that is the sort of dream situation in Australia. Also, I believe Forrester has gas, most of his mines, so that with a lot of gas, because you can split gas into hydrogen.
That's right.
That can be considered blue hydrogen if you collect the greenhouse gases that come out of that.
As carbon capture?
Yes.
But Andrew Forrest would say that carbon capture doesn't work in lots of cases. That's his contention anyway.
Well, then...
that's pumping hydrogen into the ground.
But if you...
Carbon into the ground, sorry.
No, that is a waste of really good carbon dioxide. All green things like to absorb carbon dioxide. In fact, they have to. It keeps them alive. You probably remember a few months ago, we had a shortage of carbon dioxide, and suddenly all of the food storage people were complaining and the beer makers were complaining. Because
it helps with refrigeration, doesn't it?
Yes.
And carbonation of drinks and so on.
When we import lettuce leaves from the Netherlands, they're all grown in massive greenhouses that they pump carbon dioxide into that makes the leaves grow more quickly. So it's a very useful gas. This idea that it's the evil enemy is completely wrong, but you do have to catch it and use it. And if you don't catch the gas, then you're making grey hydrogen, which is not actually good for the environment.
Victoria, what are you hearing in the city about hydrogen? On the front of various money magazines over recent weeks, I've seen cover stories about hydrogen. You're seeing people move into this investment. I got a load of calls from the city yesterday when we broke the story about that JCB deal with Andrew Forrest, based on particularly green hydrogen, using renewable energy to make hydrogen rather than using fossil fuels to power the electrolysis that then makes the hydrogen. Is this a subject among the financiers?
I'd say that renewables is definitely a very hot topic among financiers, whether that's hydrogen or battery technology, where we've seen massive rises in market prices, and also carbon permits as well, which have been going through the roof. So it does feel as though there is a major focus on hydrogen at the moment. And you pointed out sort of the difference between green hydrogen, which is what the JCB deal is about. Joe Bamford, the son of the truck company, essentially doing this big deal with Fortescue up till 2030. And that's very different to the broader market, which is mainly grey hydrogen, which is actually using natural gas. So it's a bit complicated, but essentially it's just not as clean. It requires carbon capture, and it doesn't go as far as to reach certain climate targets as COP26 and governments and individuals are all looking to achieve.
Well, we're going to take this discussion over the break, a very interesting discussion in light of COP26, I think. You're watching On the Money with me, Liam Halligan. After the break, more on this question with Hugo Spowers of River Simple, Malcolm Grimston of Imperial College, Catherine McBride and Victoria Scholar here in the studio. Is hydrogen the key to net zero? Keep your thoughts coming in. Emails, we'll be reading out some of those later in the show. Stay with us. You're On the Money.
Hello again. Plenty of bright blue skies today. Sunny spells for many, especially inland. There will be further showers, however, particularly near the coast. And it will feel cold in the wind and chilly overnight with a touch of frost in places. Low pressure is still close by. It's to the north of the UK and we're dragging in this colder northwesterly airflow. But the isobars less tightly packed compared to Monday, and so less blustery, less unsettled on the whole. And for many, it's a fine, bright day with plenty of sunshine. Showers inland, I think, particularly for the Midlands, southern and southeast England, perhaps northeast England as well. Showers fairly few and far between. They'll mostly be appearing into northern and western coastal areas, and in that blustery breeze it will feel on the cool side, 9 to 13 Celsius typically. Under clear skies then, temperatures fall away overnight, a touch of frost forming in places. But further showers will feed into northern and western coasts, and some more prolonged rain at times for northeast Scotland, and then that sinking south into Aberdeenshire on a brisk breeze. Frost-free in the north with that breeze, but otherwise temperatures dipping to 1 to 3 Celsius typically inland, perhaps -1 in some sheltered spots. So chilly starts to Wednesday, frost first thing, a few fog patches for the Midlands, southern and southeast England. Soon enough though, this area of cloud and some fairly prolonged showers pushes through parts of eastern England, reaching East Anglia by the afternoon. That brisk breeze in the North Sea will feel cold, and it will be breezy in the west with further showers here. But inland, central slice of the UK, seeing a lot more dry and bright weather with some sunshine. The showers continue to topple south across East Anglia into southeast England on Wednesday evening. Eventually, most of the showers die away. Still some for West Wales, Devon, Cornwall, northern Scotland, but another frosty night in store and a chilly start once again on Thursday. Cloudier skies appear on Friday, turning unsettled in the northwest.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for the political correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the political correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday. Call to the point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the Channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday right here on GB News for To The Point.
Welcome back. You're watching On the Money with me, Liam Halligan, as the COP26 Climate Change Summit gets into gear, day 2. We're talking about how much it's really going to cost to go green, and if cost-effective renewable energy, in particular hydrogen, is the UK's answer to achieving its net zero targets. All 4 guests are still with me, but before we go to them, have a look at these pictures. This is a JCB digger powered only by hydrogen. I think you can see the pictures coming up there. This is just near JCB's HQ a few weeks ago, filmed by our GB News camera crew. And that digger runs on hydrogen, and all it emits is water. And obviously JCB diggers, they're pretty heavy things. And JCB, the founder of JCB, or the chairman, the son of the original founder, Lord Anthony Bamford, has just done a deal with a company that I mentioned earlier, Fortescue Mining Group, run by the Australian mining titan Andrew Forrest, known to his friends as Twiggy. And what's interesting about that is that JCB has agreed to buy 10% of the hydrogen, clean hydrogen, produced with renewables that Fortescue produce between now and 2030. And JCB are going to use their savvy and their skill to distribute that hydrogen across the UK. So Lord Anthony Bamford and Andrew Forrest, between them, they're not waiting for governments. They're just using technology because they think they can make profits and help this country achieve net zero. And yesterday we ran here on The Money interview that I did with Andrew Forrest of the Fortescue Mining Group as he was announcing that deal with JCB. And here's just a little clip from that interview yesterday.
You get hydrogen we have for 100 years odd from fossil fuel. Problem with that, no matter which way you cut it, and all the bull dust which is out there, I'm telling you it's a charade. Any hydrogen made from fossil fuel, it's going to speed up global warming. It's purely marketing. If it doesn't come from renewable electricity, it's going to compound the problem. So it's got to come from wind. You've got a truckload of that here. Solar, we've got a lot of that in Australia. Any form of renewable energy, geothermal, hydro, but it's got to be renewable. And that will make all the hydrogen the world will ever need, period. You will not have any more pollution. If you get hydrogen from fossil fuel, you're going to warm the planet quicker. There's one path which is going to lead the world into quicksand. Literally, we're going to sink into global warming, and that's hydrogen made from fossil fuel.
Let's go now back to Malcolm Grimston of Imperial College. He's a research fellow at the Centre for Energy Policy and Technology, a very distinguished researcher in this area. Malcolm, there you had somebody who knows what he's talking about, Andrew Forrest, there saying that if we generate hydrogen using fossil fuels, he called it a con, he called it a charade. This is so-called blue hydrogen that isn't created by renewable energy, and yet it's that blue hydrogen which is at the centre of the government's hydrogen strategy, such as it is. Andrew Forrest says that's because the government's been captured by the oil and gas lobby. What do you think?
I think there's a lot of concern about this as an argument at present, because unless the electricity is generated by... We shouldn't leave nuclear out of this as well. Nuclear is a very effective way of potentially of generating very low carbon or zero carbon hydrogen. And Sizewell C, the next nuclear plant we're likely to build in the UK, they're looking very seriously at a hydrogen production facility which would be built into that plant. But with renewables and nuclear, you don't have a starting point of something that's got carbon you've got to get rid of. Now, as mentioned earlier, if you can sequester that carbon extremely efficiently, then you can argue that use of hydrogen is less carbon intensive than the direct use of the methane, say, for electricity generation or for heating. But the best efficiencies of carbon capture and storage, as far as I'm aware, still hover around the 80, perhaps 90% mark. So the most effective carbon capture and storage we've got doesn't capture all of the carbon. And carbon dioxide is a useful gas, but the volumes we are talking about here, you can't do all of that, frankly, with greenhouses in the Netherlands. There's going to have to be quite a lot of sequestration of carbon, of separating the carbon off from the biosphere. And then you have the question of how sure can we be that those long-term carbon stores are going to remain integrated or retain their integrity, into the long term, and you don't get sudden explosive release of carbon dioxide in the future. So undoubtedly, I think that it is far, far safer if we can be making the electricity that we then make into hydrogen from renewables or nuclear in the first place. I think the argument's very interesting how Greens like Jonathan Porritt are extremely sceptical about hydrogen at the moment, saying that the gap between the hydrogen as we make it today and what would look like green hydrogen is absolutely vast. And he's a long way from convinced that this isn't just greenwash on behalf of the industry.
Hugo Spowers, I know you are at the cutting edge of this technology in your own right at River Simple. Andrew Forrest talked to me a lot about turning hydrogen into liquid form so it could be transported via the use of something called green ammonia. Is that a research technology that you recognise as a serious contender?
Oh, absolutely it is, but it's not new. We've got better ways of doing it than we used to. It's worth pointing out that we've had green hydrogen from electrolysis for a long time too. It's not a new technology. In fact, most of the world's fertilizer was made with ammonia by Norway from hydroelectricity until 1945, when we started using natural gas as our source of hydrogen for fertilizer production. So there's nothing new about it. I absolutely agree with Andrew Forrest that the green hydrogen is the way to go. Though carbon capture and storage is something we've been working on for quite a long time now, nobody has successfully done it at scale. And I think the real death knell, ultimately, is that there's no prospect of it being as cheap as green hydrogen at scale. It is a very expensive process, even though, as Malcolm points out, it's not very effective anyway. And it really is an investment in the status quo. So I don't really think it's a very wise investment to invest in developing blue hydrogen, an unproven technology, when we know that any such investments are going to be under increasing pressure year by year to close down because of regulatory pressure. The green hydrogen, on the other hand, is available now. It's a proven technology, and we just got to scale it up. And I think we can scale it up much quicker than we could develop the blue hydrogen as an alternative approach. But I understand why, if you're in the business of digging natural gas out of the ground, you want to find a way of using it. It's not a good enough argument for continuing to do so, though.
Well put, Hugo Spowers. Victoria, it strikes me in our own small way here on The Money and in some other little highways and byways of the media, this whole cost issue really is now coming to the fore. It's not just about climate change and chest beating and virtue signalling. You're getting serious people now getting down to the nitty-gritty of the economics of this. Is that your sense too?
Yeah, and it just feels as though from an economics point of view that there is a need for renewable energy more than ever. If we look at fossil fuel markets, we've had a chronic underinvestment and we're not quite there in the renewable space yet, which is why we're seeing petrol prices hit record highs, diesel prices hit record highs. So there's a massive need for energy. So it's not just about the climate, it's also about servicing the needs of our country and the world.
Wise head on you, Catherine. What's going to happen?
Well, I think that I don't want to give the impression that I don't think green hydrogen would be the best, but in the same way that people complain about converting to electric cars, that they don't have places to plug them in.
Yeah, you need the infrastructure, don't you?
We are going to have exactly the same problem with hydrogen. And also there is the conversion of the car fleet in this country. But they are already making hydrogen-powered cars. The Japanese have been working on this.
Well, Hugo Spowers is making them in Wales.
In Wales.
Joe Bamford's making them in Northern Ireland. He's making buses. Wrightbus is making buses that are powered by hydrogen.
Well, there's a lot of large vehicles have been going towards hydrogen because even in a regular car, the weight of the battery is about 25% of the weight of the car. So if you're going to go into the big trucks and the big Bamford sort of mining equipment, the batteries would be just massive.
And that's why hydrogen can get around that.
Yes.
We've got to leave it there. We will come back to this subject. Catherine McBride, Centre for Brexit Policy, Victoria Scholar, of course, of Interactive Investor, and Hugo Spowers of River Simple, and, of course, Malcolm Grimston of Imperial College. My thanks to you all. Before we carry on, I'm just going to bring you a few emails. David says, the only way we'll ever succeed in stopping fossil fuel being used for energy is to go nuclear in a big way. We've discussed that here on The Money as well. This should have been on the agenda for years. Bruce says, bet your life, Liam. Well, a few quid, not my life. Whatever alternative energy supply they come up with to save the planet, government will ensure we will be paying top dollar for it. They've got to raise that tax from somewhere. And finally, Alex says, car companies have chosen electricity. The deal is done. Hydrogen has simply missed the boat for personal transport. Keep your emails coming. We love to hear from you here on The Money. You're watching On The Money with me, Liam Halligan, and after the break, I'll be sitting down with Jonathan Haslam, former Chief Communications Secretary for John Major, and the first person to have hooked up to the email in the number 10 press office ever. He's that old. That's my Money Talk series. Before that, here's the GB News headlines with Rosie Wright.
Good afternoon. Let's get you up to date. Ending and reversing deforestation by 2030. That's the promise of 105 countries at the climate conference COP26. It's the first major agreement at the summit and could help to protect 85% of the world's forests. Boris Johnson says the pledge is humanity's chance to change from nature's conqueror to its custodian. 2 Metropolitan Police officers have pleaded guilty to misconduct in public office after they shared images of the bodies of 2 murdered women. PC Dennis Jaffa and PC Jamie Lewis took photos of murdered sisters Bieber Henry and Nicole Smallman on WhatsApp while they were protecting a police cordon. Some MPs are calling for the rollout of smart motorways to be suspended because they have safety concerns. The scheme uses the hard shoulder as a permanent traffic lane. It's been criticised after multiple incidents where broken-down vehicles were hit by other drivers. Yesterday, demonstrators protested against smart motorways by marching to the Houses of Parliament. Antonio Conte has been appointed as the new Tottenham Hotspur head coach. It comes after Spurs sacked Nuno Espirito Santo after only 4 months in charge. The former Inter Milan manager has signed an initial contract with the club until summer 2023. He says he's extremely happy to return to coaching. Supermarket Morrisons have apologised following complaints on social media over one of their food labels. Some customers accused Morrisons' labelling of being anti-EU, referencing this chicken crown sold by the supermarket that described its ingredients as containing non-EU salt and pepper. When we reached out to Morrisons, they said their label is adhering to British packaging regulations and that they're going to be redesigning it as it was not political commentary. You're up to date here. I'll have more for you at 2 o'clock. See you then.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for the political correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the political correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday. Call to the point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the Channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. every single weekday right here on GB News for To The Point.
Welcome back. You're watching On the Money with me, Liam Halligan. Now, Insulate Britain has been demonstrating in Birmingham city centre for the first time today. And they're currently in negotiations, it seems, with the police. Our West Midlands reporter Balvinder Sidhu is live in Birmingham, where protesters who were cleared this morning have started again. Balvinder, what's going on in Brum?
Well, Liam, this is the first time they have come to Birmingham city centre. They are currently off the road. They are behind me in negotiations with police. What I can tell you is that initially there are two groups of protesters here today. The first group came around 10 o'clock this morning and they caused great significant disruption on a main city centre road in Birmingham. It's an arterial route in and out of the city, but they have a different approach. Today they've been going onto the road for 5 minutes and sitting and then removing themselves for 5 minutes, and they've been taking breaks like that. So initially they were here in the morning, then they dispersed around midday, and then they regrouped just about sort of half an hour, 40 minutes ago. You know, passers-by have been shouting at them, calling them lazy, telling them to get a life, but they're saying that they're here because they feel very passionately about their cause, which is to insulate all homes in Britain. Now, I've spoken to about 5 or 6 of the protesters, and interestingly, only one of them is actually from the West Midlands. The rest of them have come from Cambridge, Northampton and London, and they are saying that this is now part of a nationwide campaign which they will continue, and they are planning to spread across the country. They say they're going to go as far as it takes to get the government's attention. You know, at the moment, they're in negotiations with police because police are saying to them that if you don't clear off and remove yourself from the road and protest on the pavement, you do risk being arrested. Now, I can tell you that there were some youths here earlier who, you know, started talking to the protesters, and they got a little bit angry and they took off with one of their banners. And, you know, there is quite a lot of people here that have been filming the protest. And, you know, this is, like I said, this is the first time they've come to the city centre. So there's, you know, growing sort of anger on the streets here as people are saying, why are you here? Why are you doing this? You know, there could be an emergency. Somebody might need to get to the hospital. You know, we are in the middle of the city centre. There is a children's hospital literally a couple of minutes drive from here, but the protesters are letting traffic through. Like I said, they're saying they're having a different approach because you know, most of, you know, they basically face an injunction for protesting on the A roads and motorway routes, but they're saying here, this particular area where they're protesting, they're not at risk of breaching their injunction.
Update Balvinder Sidhu there in downtown Birmingham, our West Midlands reporter. She's got her winter coat on now. The clocks have gone back. Now, US President Joe Biden's addressing world leaders at COP26. We'll bring you an update from that in our news headlines at 2 o'clock. But now it's time for my daily interview series. It's Money Talks. Now, I recently sat down to talk with Jonathan Haslam, who was Chief Communications Secretary to Prime Minister John Major back in the 1990s. Haslam spent almost a decade in Downing Street, having previously been a senior civil servant in the Home Office, the Department of Trade and Industry, and the Department of Education and Employment. Now a strategic communications consultant, it struck me that amidst COP26, with Boris Johnson placing himself at the centre of events, it would be a good time to talk with somebody who knows all about managing a British Prime Minister. So here's my Money Talks interview with Jonathan Haslam. Jonathan Haslam, it's very nice to see you, particularly during this COP26 summit, because, of course, you have a huge amount of experience of being with a Prime Minister up close and personal at these big international gatherings. What's it like?
It's huge fun and it's immensely draining because you have a whole bunch of people who are demanding time from the Prime Minister. And of course, the Press Secretary is demanding as much as he can possibly get. Otherwise, we're not doing our job of informing the media of what's going on and trying to control and develop a narrative. So the pressures on Prime Ministers are immense, and they have to be across detail. They also have to be across people. Because if you're not developing a personal rapport with the individual you're talking to, you're not necessarily going to win the trick. And that cannot be understated. We've all got so used, Liam, to Zoom, Teams meetings, and so on, and you cannot bond across that. And
because you're wearing your pyjamas below your waist, right?
Almost possibly, yes. Hopefully you're wearing something below your waist. But if you want to talk to Vladimir Putin, and well, you have to sort of steel yourself to do that, but if you want to be able to talk to President Xi Jinping, you have to be able to be in the same room. And that makes a very big difference. So with all of these elements going on, it's important. But there are other things. I mean, I spent a lot of time when I worked for the Ministry of Agriculture for a brief time. We went to European summits. And if you're an agriculture minister, every agriculture minister has to go back with something.
Yeah.
So that's at a ministerial level.
Farming lobbies are powerful, right?
They are hugely powerful. Although perhaps the farming lobby today might feel that it's not as powerful with Boris Johnson as it ought to be. But we'll see when the votes are counted. But the important thing there is it's not just ministers. Actually, your officials are hugely important. And the pressures on the guys today, the Sherpas out there, is going to be immense. On one occasion on a particular topic in Brussels, where I came into our room and I'd done the circuit because, well, you're a journalist, you're probably sick of the sight of me wandering around saying,
here he comes.
Can I help you and can I just write your next intro? But that's my job. I have to get around to talk to people, to have a sense, to be able to feed back to the Prime Minister, but also to do a proper job for the journalists because we're not the best of friends necessarily, but we're not enemies either. We've got common causes. I came back into the government offices, our little section of the Justice Lipsius building, and 5 or 6 of the team were there. That's the private secretary, it's the permanent secretary, it's the chief negotiator. And I said to our minister at the time, it was Douglas Hogg, why are we here? Because I've just been out by the coffee station. The French are there, the Belgians are there, the Germans are there, and they're all punting their business amongst their counterparts. We're missing a trick. And that's quite an interesting dynamic. And it's no kick against our guys, they were doing their best. But you have to get in amongst people and influence and at least sense what's coming in your direction. So you're giving your minister the best chance of knowing what at least some of the cards are when he's faced with the Commission and everybody else.
Now, this environmental agenda goes back a long way, of course. You were in number 10 in 1992, the year of the famous Rio summit, which in many ways was a landmark on this kind of multilateral journey that we're on. Do you think COP26 is a breakthrough summit? Could it be a breakthrough summit? You're looking on from outside, but you've got all those years of experience. You can read the runes and see the white smoke and the black smoke, if you like. Do you see signs of real progress in Glasgow, or do you think it's going to be a bit of a damp squib?
I'm slightly pessimistic because we all know what the problem is. And over the last day, when we've seen opening speeches, we've reiterated it, we've experienced it. And actually, in our part of the hemisphere, we've probably had less to worry about than other places. You look at California on fire, you see what's happening to the tundra, where the melting is happening in Antarctic, all of those things, they are very obvious. There is not a leader in the world who's woken up recently has not recognised this change. Trying to get them to address it, trying to avoid the blame game is a difficult thing. We were in the vanguard, I was past Iron Bridge only this last weekend, we're in the vanguard of that industrial revolution. What price do we bear for the things that have come up now? They're imponderables. I think all you can say is that, as politicians and leaders, think not for your generation, but think for 2 generations ahead. And if that's a message to the Chinese president, that would be what I would be saying to him. What is your legacy? It's not staying in power for your lifetime. It's what you do for lifetimes of people further on. And I am pessimistic because of the costs and the costs that we as consumers will have to bear. And I think there's a growing awareness. And if I've got one thing, Liam, just to finish this bit off, is that gives me real encouragement, though, it's when industry leads, an industry, for example, faced with Trump taking off the brakes, industry said, well, actually, we've invested. We're going ahead. Our consumers want us to be greener. We've got places like Unilever and other companies who are investing massively in plastics recycling plants.
They make everything from shampoo to cereal to ice cream, right?
Yeah, packaging. Yeah. Every bit of packaging you can possibly imagine, they have an influence over. And they are bankrolling a place in Maastricht at the moment, which is going to revitalise and reuse 60 tonnes of various plastics each day. So they'll be able to say, at least 25% of our product is packaged by recycled material when it's plastic. So consumers actually have got a massive part to play with this. Responsible consumers, not people who are gluing themselves to roadways.
As a press secretary, I'm sure you see big political dangers ahead for the Prime Minister, for any Prime Minister. An awful lot of people watching this, they won't necessarily think the green agenda's all fantastic and happy-clappy like a lot of the political and media class do, frankly. They'll think the green agenda is about making their life more expensive, taking away their diesel van upon which their business depends, making heating their own home more troublesome and expensive because they're going to have to rip out their perfectly serviceable gas boiler and install a heat pump that will cost 10, 15, 20 grand and a lot more for them to run day to day. Do you think that our politicians have been honest so far, or at least transparent, about the cost of this agenda to ordinary households?
No, I don't think they are. And I think they should start treating us like grown-ups and doing interviews when they spell out some difficult issues that we've got to face and talk about investments that need to be made. So, yes, you have a diesel van and that's important for your business. How do you put in place the infrastructure that's going to allow you to use clean electricity to charge it up? And it may be more expensive. Let's talk about road pricing. There's a £35 billion hole in the Chancellor's finances when road fuel duty changes and we move away from petrol and diesel products. Now, that needs to be honestly addressed as well. And I think if you're straight with people, you probably get the approbation that you need and you'll get the backing. But it's when you faff around on programmes like yours and you have to work too hard to get straight answers out of them, the public switches off. They can take tough messages because, their parents and grandparents and others, and they've got a longer view. So, they're not selfish people. I don't think the UK generally is full of selfish people, because I look at the charitable activities that go on here, which give us enormous pride, and you think there are an awful lot of people who put themselves out for others, and that's the vast majority of this place. Go with it. And as for the politics, look, Boris, if he's smart, he's in for another 10 years, because there isn't an opposition that is making headway, because they can't decide what they're about. And at least the Tories can generally decide what they're about. And lesson to Rishi, please stop faffing around with a whole bunch of silly announcements around renationalising or rebranding various little taxes. It's a bit of a smoke and mirrors job. Fess up. There was a bit of fessing up in that speech that he gave last week. And I approve absolutely of saying the government can't do everything because Conservative...
But he spent the whole of the budget trying to assert that the government can do everything by expanding the state to its biggest size since Clement Attlee. maybe you agree with me, Jonathan, that this climate change agenda, if we're going to be successful, it's not necessarily about hair-shirtedness and sacrificing and chest-beating and virtue signalling. It's really about technology, isn't it? It's about trying to create an environment in which firms invest in technologies that are much less carbon intensive.
Absolutely. And I think we've got the technological knowledge, we have academic institutions of phenomenal skill. I know a firm which is at the moment trying to do some fundraising around developing blue hydrogen, which can go into some of the most intensive areas possible. Just think about the appalling damage to the environment from some of our tankers and our cruise liners, and think what a difference it could make actually if you could have power plants which developed hydrogen and ran on hydrogen on the high seas. And we've got that capability. There is a phenomenal wellspring there. The jobs of the future, and I'm absolutely with them, the jobs of the future can be technologically based and they can be high earners, and you can help out other countries by selling on to them at reasonable prices.
There's growing controversy about whether hydrogen should be green, made from renewable energy sources, or blue, made from fossil fuels, albeit with carbon capture, and that debate will roll on. Final question to you, Jonathan Haslam. How do you think the media has changed? After you, after Major left office, it was Blair, it was Alistair Campbell, it was New Labour. Have we entered a different, more grown-up, rather more caustic age of media relations now, compared to when you were in the saddle?
Well, I hope so. It's become immensely more complicated. I mean, what did I have to deal with, and what did Bernard Ingham deal with? Well, that was breakfast TV. Well, what a shocker. 24-hour rolling news, what GBNews has to do, and all of the social media aspects that people have to take into account. And we heard enough about that, and there is a revolution, in my view, due there in terms of regulation, because that is the Wild West. And actually, I think politicians and other people in public life deserve better. I have immense sympathy for people who are sitting in Downing Street and government departments and corporates trying to deal with all of that. It calls for more resources. And I think actually the byway is something I've also mentioned. Politicians are going to be more straight with people and sometimes pick fewer arguments for the sake of an argument, then they will be helping themselves, because the public will feel more inclined to listen to a debate rather than a shouting match.
Jonathan Haslam, thoughtful as ever. It's very nice to see you. All the best.
Thank you, Liam. Great pleasure.
Jonathan Haslam there, somebody who knew me back in my days as a young parliamentary reporter, full of insights as ever, and you can catch up with other Money Talks interviews on the GB News YouTube channel and my podcast app, including a full-length interview with Andrew Forrest that you saw a clip from earlier. And that's it for today. You've been watching On the Money with me, Liam Halligan. Every weekday at 1, I bring you your daily dose of economic, business and consumer news. This is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan, and that was On the Money.
Hello again. Plenty of bright blue skies today. Sunny spells for many, especially inland. There will be further showers, however, particularly near the coast. And it will feel cold in the wind and chilly overnight with a touch of frost in places. Low pressure still close by. It's to the north of the UK and we're dragging in this colder northwesterly airflow, but the isobars less tightly packed compared to Monday, and so less blustery, less unsettled on the whole, and for many it's a fine bright day with plenty of sunshine. Showers inland, I think, particularly for the Midlands, southern and southeast England, perhaps northeast England as well. Showers fairly few and far between. They'll mostly be appearing into northern and western coastal areas, and in that blustery breeze it will feel on the cool side, 9 to 13 Celsius typically. Under clear skies then, temperatures fall away overnight, a touch of frost forming in places. But further showers will feed into northern and western coasts, and some more prolonged rain at times for northeast Scotland, and then that sinking south into Aberdeenshire on a brisk breeze. Frost-free in the north with that breeze, but otherwise temperatures dipping to 1 to 3 Celsius typically inland, perhaps -1 in some sheltered spots. So a chilly start to Wednesday, frost first thing, a few fog patches for the Midlands, southern and southeast England. Soon enough though, this area of cloud and some fairly prolonged showers pushes through parts of eastern England, reaching East Anglia by the afternoon. That brisk breeze in the North Sea will feel cold. and it will be breezy in the west with further showers here. But inland, central slice of the UK seeing a lot more dry and bright weather with some sunshine. The showers continue to topple south across East Anglia into South East England on Wednesday evening. Eventually, most of the showers die away. Still some for West Wales, Devon, Cornwall, northern Scotland, but another frosty night in store and a chilly start once again on Thursday. Cloudier skies appear on Friday, turning unsettled in the northwest.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30am till 12pm, every single weekday, called To The Point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the Channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30am till 12pm, every single weekday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
Good afternoon. It's time to debate the big issues of the day with me, Gloria Di Piero, Liam Halligan, and a whole host of experts.
Today we're asking, should online GP surgeries be scrapped? This comes after a survey found that medics and patients are worried about remote assessments. But first, it's the GB News headlines with Rosie Wright.
Good afternoon, I'm Rosie. It's 2 o'clock. Let's get you up to date. Ending and reversing deforestation by 2030. That is the promise of 105 countries at the climate conference COP26. It's the first major agreement at